Oh, they're on the second row. I'm ready.
I just wanted to make sure we.
Okay. We're getting ready to run the trailer. We've got a great crowd tonight. Welcome. Whenever everybody's all suddenly had a brilliant idea. So, brilliant idea, opportunity is now. Okay, welcome everybody, and this is the work session for January the 24th, 2023. We're called to order. We're going to call the roll. Vice Mayor?
Here.
Alderman Blanton?
Here.
Alderman Hanson?
Here.
Alderman Peterson is absent. Alderman Berger,
Present.
she's here. Alderman Brown?
Present.
Alderman Potts?
Present.
And Alderman Baggett?
Present.
And the mayor's here too. So everybody's here except Alderman Peterson. So next item on the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to make comments on items that are not on the agenda. And I have no speaker cards for items not on the agenda. So we'll continue to move forward. And I'm going to ask Chuck Barber to bring a guest up and introduce him. We all know Chuck. Chuck is with Middle Tennessee Electric. Come on up, Justin. Yeah.
Well, I want to start by saying, I'm Chuck Barber with Tennessee Electric. I'm the Government Relations Administrator. We're real close with a lot of the folks that represent you, and it's our pleasure to be here. I think the group had reached out to TVA and had asked maybe to give a little bit of a update and some knowledge behind the events that happened December the 23rd and 24th. I want to say this, we're your power distributor, and we distribute the power that is generated, which Justin Meyerhofer here with me, he's with TVA, and he's going to kind of give you a detailed idea as far as what happened that day and where TVA stood and how that may have impacted us. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask now or ask later. We'll stick around. So, Justin, you want to take it over?
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. Good evening, everybody. Justin Meyerhofer. Delighted to be with you all tonight, although I hate for my first time to be at a work session following the events of December 23rd and 24th around Christmas time, and when we had a lot of issues with Winter Storm Elliott. It was one of the most challenging weather events that we've ever experienced in the Tennessee Valley. By way of background, I just want to say that I'm a regional vice president for TVA. I've been there almost 21 years. I spent my first 10 years in our Washington office, and my next 10 years over in Knoxville. And my family and I have just recently moved to Brentwood as of last summer. And I'm delighted this evening to have my youngest son, Thomas, join me. And I would love to tell y'all that I brought Thomas so he could see democracy in action. But there's also this game up the road called the Battle of the Woods between Brentwood and Ravenwood a little bit later tonight. And his mom told me I need to get him to the ball game. So we're going to head to that a little bit later. But I wanted y'all to meet Thomas. And Alderman Hanson, thank you for having us tonight. Mayor, Vice Mayor, all the aldermen. Alderman Hanson actually spoke with my Chief Executive Officer, Jeff Lyash, who sends his regards, and wanted me to tell you all hello. But appreciate you setting this up to where we could participate. Let me just say that we appreciate Chuck and all the partners that we have at TVA. We are a wholesale provider of electricity. If you go back in your history books, you may or may not know that TVA is about to celebrate our 90th birthday, May the 18th of this year. We're excited about that. We've got a threefold mission, which it's actually written in congressional statute, and that's energy, economic development, and environmental stewardship. The way I always like to think about it is we keep the lights glowing, we keep the river flowing, and we keep the valley growing from an economic development perspective. So we are a company of 10,000 employees.
Wow.
We are headquartered over in Knoxville, corporate headquarters. Then operational headquarters is in Chattanooga, and then we have plants all throughout the Tennessee Valley, the 7 states that we serve. And those include hydro plants, gas plants, nuclear plants, coal plants, and then we even have a pump storage facility that we call Raccoon Mountain that's right near Chattanooga, Tennessee. Some of y'all probably been there. But let me just quickly speak to the events of December 23rd and 24. TVA routinely forecasts and we plan and we prepare for the worst. The storm that came in at a very difficult time for us all, 2 days before Christmas, when we had a consistent 48 hours of single-digit temperatures. And what happened to TVA, we have about 32,000 megawatts of generating capacity. That's with all those plants that I just mentioned, 32,000 megawatts. We also have the ability to purchase what we call off the market, which is buying power from our neighbors. And we have the ability to do that up to 6,000 megawatts.
Wow.
So we plan for and we expect upwards of 38,000 megawatts of electricity. On that 48-hour time frame, what we experienced was the highest ever energy demand in the Tennessee Valley. We set a record. We had an energy demand of 740 gigawatt hours, 33,425 megawatts. Now, you may be scratching your head going, what happened? You just told me you had the ability to have 38,000 megawatts. What happened was between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. on the morning of the 23rd, TVA lost generation at 2 of our biggest coal plant, 2 units at our biggest coal plant, which is called Cumberland, the Cumberland fossil plant, which is about a combined 2,500 megawatts of electricity. So we lost 2 of those units. We had an instrument on top of the boiler that actually froze, which for safety reasons and taking care of our employees, those units went offline. We lost the second unit 2 hours later on the morning of the 23rd, which put us in a really, really tough position. We had folks out working in these extreme conditions. Our partner at Middle Tennessee Electric, they had their line workers out working in these extreme conditions. We then, on the morning of the 23rd, everybody wakes up in the morning, right? And they crank on their coffee pots, they turn on their dishwashers, they turn on their heaters. Everybody was kind of home for Christmas around that time. It was a Friday morning. And we saw demand go up significantly higher at that point. And what happened mid-morning on the 23rd was we had to ask our customers to go to what we call in the industry Step 50, which is ELCP, stands for Emergency Load Curtailment Plan. We had to go to a Step 50 and ask our customers like Middle Tennessee Electric to ask their customers in residences and go ahead and start doing what we call 15 to 30 minute rolling blackouts. This is going to sound really strange, but in our business, those rolling blackouts ultimately save the power grid. That's the reason we had to do that. That's the reason we asked our customers to do that. And our customers, our 153 local power companies like Middle Tennessee Electric, they responded quickly, and they saved TVA from having to go to what we call a step 60, which would basically be us saying we got to open up the breaker at the distribution point within all of those cities that we serve, which would not have been good. So tonight, I want to thank Chuck. I want to thank the Middle Tennessee Electric team under the leadership of Chris Jones. They did an absolutely phenomenal job of preventing something that really could have been catastrophic. And some of you all may remember the Texas freeze a couple of years ago when they had rolling blackouts in a very challenging time during that winter storm event. We prevented that from happening because of what our local power companies like Middle Tennessee Electric did on behalf of the Tennessee Valley. So really appreciate that, and great leadership there by Chris and the team at Middle Tennessee. We don't ever want that to happen, right? We realized that was right before Christmas. So on behalf of TVA, I'm here to apologize, say that we're sorry. We're going to do our best in our after action reviews to make sure this never happens again. And that process is underway right now. So with that, I'd be willing to entertain any questions or take feedback, whatever I can help with.
Well, Justin, we appreciate your being here. There were a number of us that were on a call with Jeff Lyash, and I circulated kind of the notes from that to our board. And I'd understood from that call that there would be follow-up with those mayors at a future time. So my question to you is when is that coming forward? Because we were informed that there would be an after-action plan and you were working to develop it. So when is that happening, and when are we going to hear?
You're going to hear very soon, Mayor. And we've got a process underway right now. And I think in our first, we've named a Blue Ribbon Commission to take a look at everything that happened. Former Senator Corker is on that Blue Ribbon Commission. We've got some industry experts. My expectation is we'll have some results from that in our own internal after action review by the end of January. And then following that, longer term, we'll have more actions probably by the end of February.
Other questions from the board? Alderman Berger?
Yes, thank you very much for this report. I think it was extremely helpful for the board and probably everybody here in this room and listening. I know you tried to communicate in some shape and form during that time, but I think the general public didn't really know what was going on. And I think that is hard for them to figure out because they wondered, especially at Christmas, how long is this going to be? I've got baked goods in the oven, things like that. And I'm like, we're so blessed to have what we have, but things happen. And we understand that once in a while. And it was such a bad timing for it. But I would say that if I could stress anything else, it would be to look at the communication level to the general public. We all heard, as elected officials and everything, we try to put those things out to our constituents. But I think even a better job of doing that, I would just encourage that. But most of the time you do a great job at communicating and putting things out to all the members. So I thank you for that.
Well, I wanted to say this, and it's ironic that you brought that up, but just like TVA, we're doing a deep dive into not only communications, but we also had some equipment failure and had to send linemen out to be able to bring it back on once we dropped that breaker off. And it poses some serious issues, when you're out in this kind of, or that kind of weather
it's
dealing
terrible.
with that. But today, we actually, and we've been continuing to do this step by step, but we have met with the Williamson County Emergency Management Group. And I was in that meeting this afternoon, and we're looking at better ways to communicate. I really feel like from a county standpoint, to have one-stop shopping and let that filter through is a pretty good suggestion. Because when you're dealing with minute-by-minute type responses, you want to make sure you get the right message at the right time and ensure that the public gets that as well. So we're looking at that and really taking a deep dive into how that communication should
And
look.
Chuck, I would urge you to make sure you're working very closely with the cities, the mayors, the administrators, because we're able to get word out immediately on emergencies and things like that. And I know all the cities would be willing to help with that, and that might be helpful.
Absolutely.
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've hit on something too that we are taking a look at, and we are going to talk about our level of communications with our own local power companies. We went from what we call step 10 to step 50 in about an hour and 20 minutes. So, but clearly there's ways for us to improve on communications, make sure that our local power companies have everything they need so they can be responsive to you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I just want to let the board know, staff has been engaged in these discussions as well from an emergency management and just operational standpoint. And that communication piece is a key part of that too. So we're at the table as well, working through both what we experienced, but what we could anticipate to experience if we're ever back in that situation again, and how those plans fit together. So we appreciate the partnership and the work that we need to do going forward to be in a better spot. Thank you.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you. This was the first time that we've ever had to do anything like this in TBA's 90-year history. But it woke us up a little bit to make sure that we never allow something like this to happen again. So we appreciate y'all's time tonight, and happy to take any other questions or get my son to the basketball
Do you have a
game, whatever
question, Alderman?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I think we're at your mercy when it comes to our energy source. So you didn't have to be here tonight to stand in front of us and chuck you either. And thank you, Gabrielle, because I think good customer service goes all the way up the ladder. So thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item 2 is a report from Sister Cities. Are you going to run this show, Gabrielle? Have
I'm
at
just
it.
going to start it. He's gonna
Okay,
finish it.
Dave.
We are sister cities of Franklin and Williamson County, and I'm Gabrielle Hanson, the president of Sister Cities, and this is David Haas, our treasurer. Sister Cities was started in 1956 by President Eisenhower. He wanted to network communities across the globe so that we could share ideas and be citizen diplomats, learn about their cultures, our cultures, share our comparisons, of which we've noted lately are very similar with infrastructure issues in communities our size in our sister cities. And we also started out of a leadership Franklin class in 2001, headed by Doug Sharp, who's here tonight. And we are also members of Sister Cities International.
I think the only thing I might add, if you think back to President Eisenhower, about 10 years earlier, he was involved in a worldwide conflict. And his view was that
Yeah,
if people
that's
knew each other around the world as friends, there'd be much less conflict. So that was what the driving force was behind Sister Cities. It's actually a city-to-city relationship. We happen to be the people that help the city in executing that relationship. Right now, we have 3 sister cities, interestingly enough, started by 3 different mayors. Mayor Miller back with Carlton Place in the early 2000s. County Laos with Mayor Shore in 2008, and then Bad Zodenam Taunus in 2016 under Mayor Moore. Maybe a little background on me. I spent 35 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers as an audit partner. I went over to Germany in 1988 for 18 months and came back 7.5 years later. I was there when the wall fell. I lived from 1990 to 1993, a 5-minute walk from Bad Zoden. If I wanted to go to the restaurants, I went to Bad Zoden. If I wanted to go to the grocery store, I went to Bad Zoden. So that's why I'm on the board. I actually found out from people in Bad Zoden that we were sister cities. There's a process in identifying sister cities. Sister Cities International assists us, but it's typically a 2, 3, 4-year process because they're looking to marry up Franklin or Williamson County with another organization somewhere else where both benefit from the relationship. We're hopeful to establish a fourth sister city in the next few years, most likely south of us. So that's one of the things that we're working on. COVID has been difficult for us, lots of people. I guess I'll turn it back to Gabrielle. I can talk forever.
And some of our board members are here tonight. They're in our audience, and they can stand when I call their name. Patricia Kriebel, Vice President. David Haas is our Treasurer. Kim Cannon is our Secretary. Jason Collins, our outgoing President, who got us through COVID remarkably well. Doug Sharp, the founding member of Sister Cities. Summer Sheldon. Roger Walters.
Roger's not here. He's in Houston, but his partner Alan's here.
I'm going to let you pronounce our newest member's name, please.
Jairo Estrada.
Thank you. Stephen Price is our City of Franklin representative to Sister Cities. Cheryl Wilson is our county representative, and Matt Brown is our BOMA representative.
So we execute a number of programs and events during the year. We have a youth exchange, principally with with Germany. We have 12 students arriving from Germany on the 2nd of February, and they'll stay until the 16th.
Turn back around so that it'll get recorded there, Dave.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, we'll have 12 German students here from the Einstein Gymnasium in a neighboring town to Bad Zoden. Also familiar to me, the 3 little boys that lived next to me when I lived over there all went to that high school. 2 ended up being exchange students who spent a year with us when I was living in Michigan, and all 3 became doctors. 2 PhDs and 1 MD, so didn't rub off on my sons. Annually, we have Celebration Nations, Con. Most recently, we've done it at the Williamson County Performing Arts Center. Last year, it was Irish themed. This year, I think it's going to be focused a bit on our sister city in Canada. I believe Jason Blaine has agreed to be our star, if you will. We host delegation visits. We had a group here from Germany in early October, led by the vice mayor. The mayor was to come, but he had a sports injury just before they were to fly. So we had a great time, and the community really turned out. They're kind of embarrassed in terms of what they're going to have to do for us when we have people go back. And we actually had a call with our sister city counterpart today. It's called ECUS, and they're having a wine festival May 26th to June 4th, and they'd love to have as many people from Franklin to come over and see them. So we extend this invitation to everyone in the room and anyone that might be listening. The Great Pumpkin that shows up for Pumpkin Fest, that comes from our sister city in Canada in Carleton Place. It's quite an endeavor. 2 years ago, because of COVID restrictions, Jason Collins drove up to get the pumpkin because he could get it across the border and into the U.S. So he saved Pumpkin Fest. And in 2023, beginning probably in October, we're going to have a special exhibit that's going to come here celebrating the life and teachings of Alexander von Humboldt. Probably the foremost natural historian of the 1800s. He was a friend of Jefferson. He spent a lot of time here in the United States. Humboldt, Tennessee is named after him. But one of our sister city representatives in Germany, his father or grandfather started a private collection. It's one of the largest private collections in the world. It was meant to be over here for the 200th anniversary of the birth of Humboldt a couple of years ago. It's been presented in Paris, in Czech Republic, in Germany. It should be something quite nice, and it's really something we want to get the school children from Williamson County to visit. It'll be held at the archives, and planning is far along.
We have a very robust youth exchange program that's headed up by Kim Cannon. They're heading to Germany we're having guests in from Germany in February, so you'll be seeing them all around Franklin. They're meeting with Eric and the mayor. We're also trying to engage Ireland and Canada back into an exchange program as they've opened up post-COVID.
I talked a little bit about Celebration of Nations already. I think I want to just thank the Tennessee Arts Commission because they've been great supporters, sponsoring a portion of the event. We've also had a great deal of support from the Franklin Noon Rotary. I'm involved there, and it's been quite good. In 2019, we had a failed event. It was very large, and fortunately, a couple of board members stepped up to make us whole. Since then, we've been much smaller scale, but we're profitable. We make $2,000 to $3,000. With the support of the city, which on an annual basis is $6,500, that covers our operating costs. Beyond that, we have to fundraise. Unfortunately, we've had some donors that have contributed some money across the time. In addition, this past year, we asked the city and the board to help us host a delegation from Germany and as well prepare for the Humboldt exhibit. We had a meeting with Mayor Moore and Eric a week or so ago reporting on where we stood. We have a delegation coming from Ireland right after they enjoy St. Patrick's Day in New York. I guess we're not quite the draw, but I guess they'll deal with the hangover here in Franklin. With the students coming, we incur costs there because what happens is family members host the students and take them all around. So it's a wonderful learning experience for the kids, and it's eye-opening for our people who head over.
We appreciate the support from the community and from the city and look forward to more years of exchanges and celebration of nations with sister cities of Franklin and Williamson County.
Are there any questions?
Good job.
And let's thank our volunteers that make this group go.
Well, great report, and we always appreciate hearing from things that we're supporting in the various commissions, and so we'll continue that. If it's okay with everybody, we'll move on to item 3, which is a discussion of ordinance 2022-47, an ordinance to amend ordinance 2022-03, amending Title 16 for public gathering and expression events.
So
I do have some speaker cards.
So I won't take a lot of time in terms of presentation. We had some discussion last week or 2 weeks ago on this, but did not get specific direction. I put a slide up on the screen that might help facilitate at least some of the topics we may want some guidance on. And I'll just walk through those very quickly and then turn it over to the board or however you want to handle further discussion or question. One of the topics was what is an event threshold that would fall within what you've got in place, the permit standard. And what was suggested 2 weeks ago is still something I put out for your consideration, that if it's fewer than 20 attendees and there's no amplification, it does not constitute an event. There's no permit required. There's nothing. We don't get into a situation regarding time of day or frequency or any of those other elements. It just is a gathering, but it's small enough and it's not impactful enough that it would warrant any kind of permit or oversight in that regard. So that's a starting point for that discussion. Some of the other things that were incorporated in the update of the ordinance that you all talked about last week that I think is part of the discussion is the downtown restriction on Friday and Saturday evening, meaning there would not be permitted events on those evenings. So if they hit a threshold that required a permit, right now what you were saying is that those Friday and Saturday evenings in the downtown district would not allow us to issue a permit. The The other general restriction was that events would not be permitted after dark citywide, that was a consideration. Just put on the general consideration that amplification in and of itself is disruptive enough. You may want to consider permitting that as a permit threshold. And then the issue regarding reoccurring events that we talked about, maybe a limitation of once per month had been incorporated in that if the frequency becomes also an issue that you want to look at in terms of does it start to take over the public space, and do you want to look at that as well. Again, if it doesn't constitute an event, the reoccurring doesn't apply, but that's something for you all to give us direction on. So I just put those out there as those seem like the issues that we were hearing questions about or concerns about, and that where some adjustments had been made in the ordinance standard last year, and welcome any discussion on that or guidance. Again, I'd sort of suggested that first bullet 2 weeks ago that, hey, if it's fewer than 20 and they're not amplifying, it's not an event. Let's not get into trying to make that something to enforce, because first of all, it's really difficult to enforce. And in and of itself, it may be difficult to tell just a normal gathering of people from something would constitute an expression event. So that may be a starting point for the discussion, and we're glad to help you with that. But we really want to hear from the board and see what, if any, adjustments you want us to make, or draft options for you within certain parameters, and then you can give us further direction there. We're open to your guidance. So I'll stop there and see where you want to go from there. So thank you.
I can, if that's appropriate then. But before I ask them to come up, I did have an op-ed that I sent to the paper, and I need to make a few corrections in it. The first one is, and apologies to Mr. Daniel. I called him a pastor. If somebody called me a pastor, I would think that was but anyway, I want to apologize to him because that was incorrect. And then I do want to clarify also, in that I had mentioned that we had not met with Mr. Daniel, and since then we have met with Mr. Daniel and had a good conversation along with Pastor Berger. So I have two speakers to item number 3, Andrew Clark and Jeff Daniels.
I'll yield my position.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Jeff, I'll give you a couple of minutes. Go ahead. A couple of minutes.
I can't believe that I'm standing here before you to ask you if it's all right for me to pray and worship in the square. It shocks me. Absolutely shocks me. And people say that I've read your bios, by the way. You go to church, you're men of faith. Put your faith hat on right now, take your politic hat off. Because every one of us in here is accountable to God first and foremost. He takes precedence over everything that we do. If we are faithful and just and look to Him, He will guide you in your decisions to do the right thing. I want to read you a testimony from a young girl in the square. When I read this testimony, it brings tears to my eyes. Because this is what the square did for this young girl. I'm not even going to give her name. She said, "My name is Jane. I met Shan and Jeff in the square. I am writing this to say just how life-changing the Saturday night worship nights at the square have been for me, and so many others. Personally, these nights have saved my life. For many years, I struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol and suicide, and those nights of worship reminded me that there was still hope for me, and that maybe, just maybe, God was not done with me yet." And she said, "He definitely wasn't." Anyways, those nights of prayer and worship, being surrounded by loved ones and strangers, all united for our love for God, truly shifted how I viewed the world and my purpose in it. Those nights stopped me from giving up. I always left worship at the square feeling encouraged, inspired, and oh so loved. What the square did for us is nothing short of a miracle from God. It is so rare these days to see people gathering from all walks of life, putting their differences aside and worshiping God together. They acted in obedience to our Creator and have saved not only my life, but so many others in the process. I am not sure where I would be, or even if I'd be alive, if it wasn't for this worship night and being prayed for. I truly know without a doubt these Saturday nights played a huge part in my recovery and turning my life around from the chains and drugs and alcohol that bound me. I thank God for putting the people in the square in my life and for welcoming me to join them in worship with open arms and unconditional night love. Those nights offer hope. These nights are changing lives. This is one of hundreds of testimonies. And all we do is one thing. We play music and we let God do the work. I don't need to say anything. Every one of you go to church, you know God is more powerful than us. And sometimes our words can quench him. God just says, play the music. I'll draw them. And when I draw them, I'm going to set them free and I'm going to do a miracle in their lives. Yes. That's what it's about. This is about God doing the work, not me. I'm just a vessel. I came from New Zealand 16 years ago. I'm just a normal guy. I could be standing in any square. I didn't expect to come standing in a square worshiping, but this is what God's called me to. And I will tell you this, that I will not stop until God tells me to stop. Yes. That is a fact. Nobody is going to stand before God in my life. Nobody. I've made my case for what God wants to do. Now it's up to you. And I ask you to look at your faith. Pray, ask God, show me. What does this really happen? What is this really doing out there? I'm telling you, it's changing lives. It is changing lives. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, thank you for your comments, board.
First question.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill, Vice Mayor.
If they don't do 20 attendees and no application, can they be there every Saturday night? Is that what it says? Yes. You've got reoccurring events once per month, permit. But if they don't need a permit,
Yeah.
they can be there every Saturday night, as long as there's no amplification, as long as it's fewer than 20 people.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't constitute an event. That's the question. And that's what we're saying is, what do you want to constitute an event?
Alderman?
And again, an event doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you go through a permitting. And then the reoccurring is something we would need some guidance on too. If it constitutes an event, are you okay with reoccurring or once a month, or how do you want to deal with that? So, but again, if it doesn't constitute an event, there's not a restriction. This is just about where you get into saying, well, we just want you to communicate with us and go through the permitting process.
All right.
Alderman Hanson.
So these are just some of my thoughts and opinions. I think that having this discussion has been good because it's opened up a broader conversation on what are some of the issues that are going on in our entire downtown district. And I've done some research with some that were the source of complaints in the past and association, et cetera, and found out that it wasn't specifically Mr. Daniels, but it was just the noise in general downtown from even other businesses and other street performers, and including some of our businesses that have outdoor performances, especially in our tight circle area, because we do get kind of an echo chamber going with those buildings, and the sound bounces off, and the sound might not be initially very loud, but because of all the buildings, it bounces off them, and it's like a megaphone effect. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a topic that we need to address as a whole and not just as a public expression. I don't think that we need to strike Fridays and Saturdays. I think it's a robust time in our community to have people from out of town and in town out and about. So I want to take off the Friday and Saturday. But I do want us to, if we're talking about the amplification, I want us to talk about, in general, noise downtown. And I don't care if you're a licensed business, and I don't care if that's your genre of your business, it still can be a nuisance, and it still can be disruptive to people trying to enjoy their evenings. Maybe not so much during daytime, but most of this cranks up in the evening and goes till fairly late. So I do want to see it addressed on a broad scale, and neighbors have complained about other businesses and not just expression events. And I think it's time that we address those issues for these neighbors specifically. And truly, they live in historic homes, and they're not maybe quite as well built for sound as some of our more modern homes, and they're going to take in a little bit more sound, or they can't just sit on their front porch or stand out in their lawn and talk to a neighbor because they're going to hear noise from all different directions. And I think if we're going to do this, we need to put a time limit on it. We don't want this going on at midnight. We don't want it going on at 2 a.m. But maybe if we say 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, then we're within a bedtime limit so that we're not going to be disruptive. And on the amplification, there's got to be a way to check how loud it is. If you can hear it, if Mr. Daniels is on that circle, if you can hear it beyond the asphalt where it's coming out to sidewalks that's going to disrupt somebody walking on the perimeter sidewalks around our businesses, then that's probably too loud. But if you're on that mound, on that circle, I'm going to tell you that night I was out there, it was just a tiny bit of music, but it was really moving. Yes. And the crowd was really, really lost in that moment of the soft music that was playing. It wasn't loud, but there was some music playing. And there are people that come out there because they have nowhere else to go for mental health purposes. And I know over 2 years ago, I heard about it from neighbors that this was going on out there, and I was hoping that I could just catch it sometime. And one night I drove by, and it was this wonderful spectacle of people raising their hands and joining in together, almost like a church service, but completely unorchestrated. And I was so sad that I didn't have time to pull over and get out of my car and just go up there and check it out, because you could feel the warmth and the draw just from passing by. And I hate for us as a community to lose that. God forbid communities across America would die to have this problem. Seriously. So let's be cautious how we approach this.
Respond. Let Alderman Hanson speak, please.
And let's address a larger scale problem that's going on and use this as an opportunity to address the larger scale. But I want to strike Friday and Saturday. I want to put a time limit on it. I want to buffer the noise. I don't want to totally get rid of it or in any establishment, but I do think we do need to buffer the noise just across the board in the evenings, at night, nighttime downtown. Not so much during the day because we've got a lot of traffic and cars that kind of muffle that sound, but at night particularly when people are at home and more still. But I do appreciate that you're concerned that we could be a Charlottesville or some of the other issues and some of the things we saw even in Chicago, where I have a footprint, that happened during 2020, 2021. I don't ever want those things to happen here, and I do understand why we have this in place to protect our citizens and keep them safe. But it can also be used for our harm as well, and I think that's what's happened here, and I don't think that was necessarily the intended consequence.
Alderman Brown, and then I'll get Alderman Berger and Alderman Baggett.
So a couple things first. I don't have a faith hat and an elected official hat and a business owner hat. We all serve the kingdom. We just do it from different seats, and this is the way I serve the kingdom. So let me first say, I love that I live in a city that has more churches than Starbucks. I love that. I love that we pray before meetings. And despite this false narrative that we don't want people praying in our city, I have a business right here on 2nd Avenue, and I love walking out there on Fridays and seeing people pray in our city. I love that they're praying for us. I love that they're praying for our citizens. So there has never been a desire in my heart to not see us continue to do the very reasons why we moved here was for those values and for that prayer, for that faith. Be very clear about that. The part that I haven't understood about this conversation is this resistance to the amplification. So I did what was asked by the gentleman to pray on this, and I pray on every agenda item, by the way, but I spent some special time during my 21 days of fasting to pray on this issue. And the thing I kept coming back to is 1 Peter 2:17 says, show proper respect to everyone, love the brotherhood of believers, fear God and honor the king. And the thing about the amplification I just can't quite understand is whether you're a believer or an unbeliever. Overpowering and overtaking our square with loud amplification doesn't seem to honor God with gentleness and kindness and respect and all the things that we should be showing, not only non-believers, but certainly in the family of God. And so I pray on, brother. I'm right there with you, and I think we should be doing it. What I'm trying to solve for is how do we show people our hearts? How do we bring people near? By the way, God brings people near to us through their hearts. I don't think he needs an amplifier to be able to do that for us. And I do believe what you're doing out there, and I do believe God's out there. But I don't understand the fight over the amplification. Now, do we need to deal with it in here? Maybe not. Maybe it's a noise ordinance thing that we need to deal with. But it does seem like that the real issue here is how do we have an entire community who wants to enjoy downtown Franklin in whatever capacity they want to enjoy, while also praying over our city, but be able to do that as a collective whole and not have one group over another dominating. And to your point, whether that's musicians or whether that's prayer groups or whatever, that's ultimately what the problem we're trying to solve here is. There is a safety concern, I get that, and I certainly don't want somebody getting hit by a car coming through the circle. So I think it's fair to say, what do we need to do to protect our citizens and you and your worshipers? But at the same time, it's this noise. How do we keep the decibels down to respect all? 2, show respect to everyone, love the brotherhood of believers, fear God, and honor the king. That's where I'm coming out on this thing. Thank you for being able to express that.
Alderman Berger.
Well said, Matt. I ditto what you said. I'm not sure that loud and overtaking the square is this problem. When I've been down there, I've never heard that loud or overtaking, but I think Alderman Hansen's correct. We have to address the amplification on a bigger scale. We did this back in 2006, I think, in 7, and we have a couple establishments down here that were bothering the neighbors a lot, and we started doing the decimal thing, and we have decimal readers and meters and whatever we have, and those don't work so great, but anyway, we used them for a while, and it pretty well died away. The problem did, but then we have other issues with that still, especially in the summertime when people have their doors open, they're outside of their homes and their back patios. They can hear clear over from Columbia Avenue, even from an establishment over there. So I think we can't really justify the discussion tonight on amplification. I think we have to look at that in a little bit bigger picture in order to give it justice. Because we have groups having out here on the sidewalk at Miller Mushroom in the summer doing, they have guests over there to play music. So we've got to address that. On occasion, most of these people are showing up, they're 5, 6, 7 people. On occasion, it does not harm anyone if they're doing it every week and then all of a sudden 25 people show up and it's like, oh my gosh, you're over the limit. Well, if that's happening every single week, then we're asking for a permit. And I think it's not a big deal if all of a sudden people get word of it and people show up and you've got 30 people. I wouldn't worry about that. I don't think this board should be concerned about that at all. It's just every constant week. The other thing is we have an ordinance so that we can provide space. We've talked about this a lot. actually provide space for people who want to be there spontaneously if something goes on spontaneously, a group of people want to come down here and they want to stand and hold a sign, or they want to protest, or they want to meet, they can do that. They don't need a permit. 100, 200 people can show up tomorrow and do that because you have a right with your First Amendment rights to do that. One of the reasons we ask people to do that is we like to help accommodate them. And I think the reasonableness, sometimes we have unintended consequences with some of our ordinances, and that's why we're here talking about this again. But I believe that when we wrote this ordinance, we wanted to make sure that, number one, when groups are organizing or they're coming in and they want to meet, we want to make sure we're there with safety. We want to make sure our police are alerted. If somebody's praying, we don't want them to be disturbed. If someone's demonstrating, we don't want them to be disturbed. Or if there's a reason for a permit, 2 or 3 groups might want to meet at the same time on the same place. They may have opposing views. Well, it's not real smart to put all those people together, and you want to make sure they have space. So if they have a permit, and just like Jeff here on the square, they've told me, I've spoken with them, and they said when there's downtown street festivals, they don't meet. And if there's another group who's asked for a permit on the square, and that other group's on the square, they don't meet. That doesn't mean they might not walk over there and see the people, but they're not going to be specifically doing what they do because someone else has that space at that time. So I think all those things are being taken care of. I don't think those are concerns or worries of ours. After dark, that's unintended consequences too, because, hey, it gets dark at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the winter. And so we might want to talk about extending that a little bit to maybe 7 or 8 o'clock or something in the winter. I don't think it's wise to, go on 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. I don't think that's a good idea. But, I think reasonable early evening hours in the winter would be fine. And in the summer, it stays light to 8:30, 9 o'clock sometimes. So we have a big difference there. Demonstrating and gathering and meetings all take on their own personalities and form and atmosphere. And so, I think over time and time again, we've always talked about, we want to talk about time, we want to talk place, we want to talk about the manner people are gathering. But it's not about a message. Anybody's free to say anything they want to say. Whether you agree with it or not. We're saying from this end to this end to this end to this end. Say what you want, as long as you're peaceful. We don't, we have laws. And if you're disruptive, you're breaking the law, you'll be arrested for disturbing the peace and for being an idiot out on the square, basically, to put it that way. So we all have laws in our cities for a reason. And as I said, sometimes we get unintended consequences. So I think we need to address the amplification on a bigger scale. I think fewer than 20 people, we ought to just do that. If a group of 20, 30, 40, 50 people show up, they're not going to get arrested. It's their right to show up. We're just asking people to come and get a permit so we can, if you're going to meet like that. So I want to address that issue in a bigger way because I want to make sure people understand the reason that ordinance came about. And I think reasonable people, most of the time in our community, do things, you come here, you get on the square, you meet, you hold a sign, you want to say a message, you want to express your views, you want to pray, you want to do all these things, and the First Amendment right gives us that right. We are not here to take that right away. We cannot take that right away. And I have no intentions of voting to take that right away. But I do want to make sure that we're okay with the amplification. And Jeff, your amplification's pretty low. And I know you have 2 speakers out there. You could turn one of them off maybe and make it even lower. And I thank you very much. When the people come by now to do the tours and they wave at you, you turn it off. And they speak, they give their tour, and then they leave. You turn it back on. Thank you very much. You have been very sensitive to people like that. A lot of times we don't have people who are that sensitive to other people. So when we address this ordinance, we have to address this is not just about you. It's about a lot of different things going on in that square. And we, as public officials, are really, our job is to address the citizens and make sure that we're doing the right things for all citizens. So you can count me in. I have no problem with this. I think that we should keep it as is. We should put the winter months a little bit later. Don't make it after dark. And I'm with you. I don't have a problem on Friday and Saturday night at all. Downtown restrictions. I think we ought to take that off and just see how that goes. We can always readdress it later. Anyway, those are my
Alderman
comments.
Baggett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I hate I missed the last meeting, but watched it and have been definitely following. And I live down here and walked through downtown during 2020, and I think I was probably down there one of the first nights y'all started up. And but I wanted two things real quick. You were never going to get arrested. City staff, police, correct me if I'm wrong. No objections. You were never going to get arrested. And anyone who said or perpetuated that lie is breaking the book that you and I follow and the laws that we follow. This government is best run under truth, transparency. That was not true. And I'm sorry that you may have felt that way. I'm sorry that people in this room may have felt that this city was doing that to you. Never was going to happen. So now that I have that off my chest, because I hate getting phone calls from residents who are scared that someone is going to get arrested because they're praying in our square. So this is America, and that ain't going to happen. Not in this city. Whew. All right, now, second thing, there are other things. Here's what I'm good with: under 20, no permit. 2, I'm open to Friday and Saturday night evenings being open downtown. There are reasons why in broad swaths of the city that we might not want special events happening at night in different parts of the city. Downtown the square, downtown, I'm open to that and certainly willing to consider. Recurring events, again, you want to come down here, pray, sing. There is a constitution that guarantees your right to do that. And our ordinances are only in place to guide and direct the organization and hopefully smart facilitation of those rights. Because the reality is be honest, and I've thought about this a lot. Matt's probably prayed about it more than I have, but I've prayed about it too. And I've said this a couple times to people, and I don't mean this in jest, but there's a lot more things that can be amplified than Chris Tomlin. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that, even though I agree, I love the spirit moving on our square. But there's a lot of stuff that I bet this room would be 4 times as full if it was being amplified at night on our square. I guarantee it. We'd be in the papers, we'd be villainized if we didn't have a permit process on amplification. Think about the things that aren't spirit-filled that can be amplified. So I think there's a middle ground here on the amplification. I think there's a way to have music, have that experience on the square that may not be as loud. I'm certainly, if there's any perception that I don't want to take care of loud noises downtown, I'm happy. I'm so glad to hear that this board is ready to take on some loud noises. Let's start with the mufflers. Because goodness, I'd rather start with the mufflers than your speakers. I mean, come on, in the back. I'll lean in on that. But I tell you, I appreciate Alderman Hanson and Alderman Berger bringing that up because we do need to look at it. But I think there's a middle ground there. And again, it is a neighborhood it is so close, the commercial area to the neighborhood area. I think there's a middle ground there for the amplification. Recurring events, here's what I would say is, I have no problem, again, it's people's First Amendment rights. If someone doesn't have anything to do every night, they can go out there and, speak. I mean, the Constitution doesn't prohibit someone who has time on their hands from speaking their mind. They can. But I do think that this permit process, now imagine this, if another group, maybe, but doesn't agree with you, wants to do something on Saturday nights, and there's no permit process required, how does the city begin to determine priority? We don't. And so it's a mess. And it becomes a flashpoint, possibly. We want to avoid those, right? And so I think we need to be thoughtful about the recurring events and permits. I think I would advise that applying for a permit, even if you think you're going to be there, that way there's some, we know, I mean, but that could happen. And without a permit process, it kind of is a free-for-all. Permit process also doesn't mean declined. I don't know, this has been said a lot of different ways, but applying for a permit does not mean no. I think it's the organization piece. This is really, I know it's weighed on a lot of our hearts because it pains me that you stood up and said that first sentence. And that there are people in this community that believe that. So I'm here to emphatically say that is not the case. But also ask you to meet us halfway and say, well, there's also other things we might need to take a look at having a permit for, because guess what? Everyone's not, coming to church on Saturday night at the square. There's lots of other things. And we just need to know so we can better organize and avoid some of the issues. But appreciate this board looking into this and bringing it back up, because when we did, Alderman Berger and I, this was a full weekend blackout of events. Like, it was Friday night to Sunday morning, and we we didn't fight, we just requested. And obviously that was, so this isn't a continually improving thing. I've said too much, but I appreciate y'all. So was that enough feedback on the bullet points? I think I hit all of them.
Alderman Blanton.
You all spoke so eloquently. I do not think I'll do the same, so I'll apologize. Andrew, I wish you had spoken, because then I would have something to kind of bounce off of. I happened to have a phone call with Andrew Clark. We grew up going to church together and youth group trips, know his family, and he reached out to me this week, and we had a really good conversation. And his mindset was a little bit more amenable, and no offense, we don't know each other, but so we were able to talk through some issues, and I was trying to explain the city as I understood its reasoning and things like that. I don't want to take any of your words because I don't have your permission, but knowing that you felt led to go to the square, I understand that, and not meet in an organized fashion with maybe brick and mortar surrounding you. That's your choice. I do applaud your evangelism and following your heart in that. But I think we have got to be, and we're charged to be, as laymen or women, I'm sorry, I'm the woman, you're the man, in a position to make decisions that affect the city of Franklin. And I think about regularly meeting at a public place that obviously in the city of Franklin has one of very much prominence. And I think about analogies of how, yours is a very unique situation, but I think about something as mundane as our parks and our pavilions, and the fact that we ask people to reserve those for the simplest of event as a birthday party, because we don't want people vying for the same piece of space. It's rudimentary in our work. And when we start, and not our work, but more the staff, and when we start seeing our public square be volleyed over, I've had, unfortunately, more phone calls of like, what is going on in our town? I can't even walk downtown without hearing this. I've never been to one of your gatherings, so I can't say firsthand the decibel, the noise, the amount of people, but all of this that brought us to this point today, as I understand it, and I believe, was for us to find a way to achieve balance in our community to make sure everybody's needs and desires are met when it comes to public spaces. For me, the way I interpret the after dark, it is a lot harder for us. I'm sorry I keep looking at you because I feel like let me look over here. I feel like it's harder for us to protect our community in the dark than it is in the light. And we cannot predict nor contrive who is going to come, like Patrick said very well. We may have people of other faiths that come and want to mirror what you're doing. And then we have a problem of picking and choosing. It is not personal. It is what we're called to do to keep order in our town. Friday and Saturday evening, all that's written there, I'm open to think about it, but the amplification to me falls in line with all the other issues we've been trying to deal with as it relates to backfire, and not to compare you to that, but it's not personal. It's what we have to do to make sure that we accommodate the needs of all. So I support it as written unless we continue to find ways to budget a little bit to make everybody happy.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank all the aldermen for all their comments, and I'm going to try to be very brief. I do want to say I appreciate you praying for us. That brings me to tears on a regular basis. It's important. This is a wonderful opportunity. It's not a problem. This is a great opportunity for us to have a very good, deep discussion right now. I don't have a problem with what you're preaching, what you're saying. I've never attended. I've only heard great things. I appreciate you sharing the testimony this evening. That means a lot. As I look at what our public expression elements are right there, and I'm going to address these in just a second, but my biggest problem is, and I won't call it a problem, my greater concern is those individuals on an opposite end of a spectrum. And I can recall one event that we had where I had to be delayed so I could go to one of my child's events. And as I was driving over here, I saw the other end of it. And I saw men carrying posters and carrying, being masked and being covered and doing things. And I looked at it and I said, oh my gosh, this could get terrible fast. But it didn't, because we had a process in place. And since we had the process in place, our great Franklin Police Department was able to address it right there on the spot. And it is very difficult to balance what we have to do and to respect everybody's rights. And I'm only hearing this anecdotally, but I greatly value that when other people want to come into that park portion of the center of our town, that you turn it down, or you let them step to the side so they can take their pictures or do whatever they want, and maybe they get curious and learn a little something else. I appreciate you doing that, but my greatest focus is what I observed that day, and it's the safety piece. It's that opposite side of what you're presenting right there. The noise amplification, I do agree. I think that there is a balance that has to be struck. As much as I appreciate a lot of the acoustic or light amplification performers that might be down there, there does need to be a balance. We do need to revisit that. I was very challenged when I heard multiple residents that live in the downtown historic area tell me, Jason, I sit on my back porch and I can hear between the mufflers and the noise coming from where the statue is, right there where Chip is, and then others. And I can't sit outside and enjoy my evening because it's so noisy. So it's never going to be perfectly silent, but it is something maybe we do need to revisit. So as far as very quickly touching on these, I do hear what you're saying as far as what happens if 23 people show up, is what you said last week. Maybe we do need to revisit that size, but again, you weren't going to be arrested. That shouldn't have been stated to you. You're not going to be arrested, 23 people show up. We got to get past that lie. As far as Friday and Saturday, if we need to revisit that, I would certainly be welcome to it, but we also have to remember that's the high traffic time right there, and there's a lot. So when it comes to amplification, cars, people, pedestrians, things like that, it's a safety measure yet again. again, I just spoke to amplification, excuse me. The next bullet point right there was reoccurring events. And there does need to be a balance. And Brandy, I think you hit the nail on the head, is we have to respect one group just as much as we do the other group. And there has to be a balance. In order for there to be a balance, there has to be a process. There has to be something in place. So I agree with everything that I see that we have there, but as Eric stated when he spoke previously, is we continue to revisit this. And so if there are specifics that have to be addressed, and they need to be presented to the board. But the way it was currently written, again, was involving safety and noise, and I feel like we kind of hit that mark right there. But if we have to revisit the event threshold, and Alderman Berger, you had mentioned the early evenings, how dark it gets. I think that we had tried to address that, actually in the ordinance. But Mr. Mayor, those are my comments. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you for sharing the testimony.
Well, I think, go ahead, Alderman Berger.
Real fast. Just remember, when we're talking about this, permits are not required for under 20 participants, so just let us remember that. Also, the public square has been around since man started living on this earth, almost. The public square is really important, what happens in our public squares, and the rights and the laws that we have that allow public square speech and activities. I want to make sure that we're very, very careful that we don't overregulate this, because we can get ourselves in a box by overregulating this when we mean well. None of these people up here mean harm. We are, I can't speak for everybody on this board. I'm a believer in Christ. I gave my life to him a long, long time ago. And I pray, just like everybody else on this board that has said tonight, when I come in here, I pray the Lord will help us to do the best thing we can do for the citizens, and do it the right way, and do it for our good and his glory. That's all. For our good, his glory. Just let me read you one thing. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully to assemble, to petition the government for a redress of grievance. The right to assemble. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to?
Yeah.
I want to summarize what we're following up on.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
wanna make sure I'm
that's
on
what
target.
I'm going to ask
Yeah,
for. I
yeah,
want
yeah.
you to tell us what you think you just listened to for the last 30 minutes.
Wow, okay. No, I appreciate the opportunity
Briefly.
today. Yes. I will. Well, here's what I heard, at least some themes around, not saying everybody said the same thing. There are some variations on all these, but I heard talk about how we deal with amplification, that is something we need to be conscious of, but maybe there's some standard, and the overall noise ordinance. We do have a noise ordinance. We updated probably about 10 years ago, something like that went away from decibels and went to distance. And so maybe we can bring that back in time of day. Yeah, it's allowed Friday and Saturday nights until 11, and Sunday through Thursday, I think 10. I think that's right. So we can talk about that time and that distance that's used in that context. It's not necessarily written for the public space, but we can look at how that would apply. And if you want to do some variation or something related to that would apply to public space. Sounds like we want to look at the Friday, Saturday downtown restriction at some level. And then also the reoccurring piece, I heard a little bit of a mixed bag there. We'll talk about that. And I do want to stress and the idea that there's a threshold for these. So if it doesn't meet the threshold, it's not an event. And honestly, we don't care. We're glad you do it, but we don't care. I mean, we're not going to get into regulating it. So, I think the other piece I would just say, to just help everybody too with this, the way the public expression event permit is written is it's written for yes. I mean, it is very narrow. I've been given the authority to grant them I have to do it in 48 hours, and the parameters at which I could deny it are very narrow, very narrow. I mean, it has to do with, we've got other events going on and we can't provide the necessary public safety for people. There's already a special event scheduled on the square or wherever it might be. Those are the kind, I mean, it's really narrow. So my ability or our ability as a city to say no to these is really, really limited, if it hits the threshold at all. So that's important for folks to know that it's designed for a yes. It's really designed to be a mechanism to communicate so that we can accommodate the event from a just logistics and safety standpoint. And in fact, it's sort of memorializing what most people have done for years in coming to us about special events. I mean, or special events, or, hey, we want to be on the square and do something. What do we need to know? And this is the kind of conversations we have with folks about how many people, where do they want to be, and that kind of thing. So I think that's largely what we want to bring back to you, and maybe show you some of what's on the books already about noise or amplification, and see how that might apply to the public space as well. Does that sound like a good working discussion? Certainly, and we'll bring back maybe some options or ideas within each of these, and then get more feedback and bring this back in 2 weeks to you for more discussion. Thank you.
So, Eric, if they wanted to come in and get a permit every week, they could get a permit every week.
We would need you to address the reoccurring element, because the way it's written right
Okay.
now is if you're doing it every week or whatever, there's a once per month so that others might have an opportunity to do the same kind of thing. So we would need you to clarify that reoccurring piece. Again, if it's under 20, it doesn't trigger it.
Right.
But if it's a larger event, 20 or more, or amplification, because amplification by itself right now triggers a permit regardless of the number of people. So that's the other piece. So you need to let us know on the reoccurring piece. I'll make sure that's part of our discussion as well.
Okay, how
Thank you.
about item 4, which is the factory district update? And I've got Alderman Brown and Alderman Baggett, I think, that wanted to speak to it, and then we'll have staff also.
Send this around.
Can we wait just a second till the room kind of clears it?
Sure.
A little noise.
Thanks for.
I would have granted it. Yeah, that's right. It would have been fine.
While we are waiting, point of order, that we've got a pretty short voting agenda tonight. We've got 2 pretty big, nice, the downtown parking study. So if we could go over, I wouldn't be opposed, but it's the mayor's call.
I've got that in mind.
Not that either of those two events have anything to do with you.
Intention here, Mayor, is not for us to spend a whole lot of time talking. We had presented the concept of the factory district as a concept, an arts district as a placemaking opportunity, but that was a pretty short opportunity. So I think what we really want to do is really get a discussion amongst the board about a factory district, an art district, and what that can entail. I think the only thing, so we intentionally did not create more slides or not planning to present anything. I think there's some great guiding discussion that we can have for staff to be able to sort of carry this forward and see where we take this. I think the only thing I would say before sort of opening the floor to the staff or whomever is that, the genesis of this was never a single project or a single idea. It was really thinking about Franklin and our downtown area and having some intentionality about creating placemaking as a way to make sure that we continue economic vitality, that we create and generate places that people not only want to come and visit, but that our residents can really enjoy. And to create some unique environments that don't, that are intentionally planned, that are attractive, that have a little bit of a different look and feel, but yet work together. And so I think there's a big opportunity in this. And by the way, there's probably other districts to come if we really thoughtfully thought about our city. And so that is the hope. And I think more than anything, we're probably just more interested in really hearing from staff and from actually our colleagues on this board about what they think about the idea and how they could imagine that. So.
The only thing I'd add, and I want Andrew to kind of take it from here, is that I think it's a really intriguing concept for us to speak and you to speak as a board about a vision you want to achieve. Because so often we're responding to a developer's vision, which is great, but it's good to have that be more of a two-way conversation. And so I'm really encouraged that you all are taking that opportunity to say, we hear that you may have this great ideas and we want to hear those too, but here's some of our vision of what we'd like to see get achieved in this area. And it's not just about the maybe design elements, it's also about, well, do we think a little differently about some of the street standards? That it's not just about conveying the traffic, it might be about conveying a sense of closeness, of just, it feels more like a place you want to be and walk across the street than just moving as many cars as we possibly can. That's just a small example. So I think it's really interesting. I want to give you all a chance to just give us some feedback as this takes form. Andrew's handed out this. We'll have a community meeting on this in mid-February that'll help us color in even more with community feedback, and it also includes our team that's working on the Envision Franklin update. So I'll let Andrew guide us from here. So take it away from there.
Yeah, I just have a few brief remarks. You guys really introduced this idea at a great time as we start the Envision Franklin comprehensive update, and we're able to incorporate this discussion into that broader Envision Franklin update and utilize the consultants to help with that. What better help to have facilitate this meeting than the consultant that we've got on board? So we're excited about that. Really appreciate the Factory at Franklin for graciously hosting this meeting, this community workshop, February 16th at 5:30 p.m. in the Heritage Room, which is right behind Liberty Hall. So really appreciate that. And thank you, Alderman Brown, for facilitating that. The community workshop is going to be interactive. We want to have stations. We want people moving around. We want to have some different exercises. The intent is to just generate ideas. What is this kind of vision for the area? New life is being breathed into the factory. There's some other development that could come to fruition in this area as well. So some of the activities that we're kind of thinking, we're looking for feedback on the overall vision for this district. So we want the community, we want property owners, we want local business owners, local residents, decision makers to kind of come together and help shape that vision. We'd like to get some input on what are the geographic boundaries of this district, streetscape improvements to Liberty, connectivity to Harpeth Industrial Court. What is the future of Harpeth Industrial Court? Are there any future land uses that aren't included in Envision Franklin that should be? What are the desired future land uses for this area? And of course, underpinning it all is an emphasis on public art, outdoor gathering spaces, plazas, those sorts of things. So to continue kind of promoting this, and we've started to promote it a little bit, and kind of after tonight, we'll do more of that. We plan to issue a press release. We'll send correspondence through our email distribution list. We're actually going to put up physical signs in this conceptualized area. So people driving by, they're going to see those signs. We're going to notify people on social media and send out mailers to property owners within this conceptualized district. So, we're looking forward to this, generating ideas. We also realize that we may need a second community workshop or a second community meeting to occur kind of later this spring to further refine the vision and whatever policy recommendations come of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Angie just put up on the screen kind of those 9 elements that might be really helpful to get feedback on, both from you and the public, that help shape this. So it's not meant to hit everything, but it's a pretty good start, and that's a lot of what Andrew just talked through. But if you want to reference that those might be some elements to give us some feedback on.
Who wants, Alderman?
I'll just say I'm excited. I think I love when you say it could be other districts, other places. I think about the unrecognized district of the Antique District that we celebrate in Second Avenue. And I think this could be great. And yeah, not going after one single residential property, but the way that the redevelopment could occur in that area. It gives opportunity for people to have options. I've talked many times about my family because that's the lens I see every decision I make. And you know, people talk about young people want this and they want that. My kids still want what I wanted, and I'm grateful for that. But not every. I look at, you know, Scott, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to bring, or Beth. Everybody needs to be able to have a choice, and I think as parents or as citizens, we all want our family to want to come back home. But if there's nothing here for them to be able to choose from, it's sad. And I think bringing in different types of land uses and opportunity for zoning allows us to give them that opportunity. I remember saying the story not too long ago, how, you know, the way that we work through the agenda and Planning Commission and then BOMA, and there have been times where we have chosen the creative path. And I think back to Berry Farms, when we were talking about, I don't know if it's Chadwell or Reams Fleming, so I apologize, but there was an arch that they wanted to put as they entered that development. And we were like, oh no, it's not in the book. I'm like, oh my gosh, why can't we have something different? Why can't we create placemaking where you can do something different? We have enough of, I say enough, we have a lot of single family dwelling if people want subdivision life. We have plenty of apartments, right, Bev? And we have plenty of historic opportunity as well. So I think it's one of those other things that down the road we'll be able to hang our hat on, that we were thinking outside the box. And I'm so proud of you two. I say that like I'm your aunt, but to watch you guys settle into this position, but really step out and say, I have an idea. And thank you, Alan, for walking alongside this idea with the factory. I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
Alderman Berger, and then I'll get Alderman Potts.
Well said. Well said. You know, there's redevelopment and development happening right around the factory, and a proposed development. And I applaud both of you. Thank you. Bringing energy to this board, bringing insight to this board, seeing a possible development, and you see the redevelopment happening, and you got on it. And it, you know, butts both of your wards, and that is the perfect thing to do for two aldermen who have projects right there by their wards to say, what can we do? When people bring you ideas and they say, hey, we want to do a development, or you look at what's happening at the factory, we have a great opportunity. I remember when Harpeth Square was going in, oh my gosh, you cannot do festival lights. We can't do it. It's not in our plan. And same thing, you know, it's like, no, you go to all these great cities, and you go down to Charleston, you go down to Savannah, you go up to Williamsburg, wherever, and you see all these wonderful things, and why don't we do this here? Oh, it's not in our ordinance, we can't do it. So I think, first of all, we got to get outside our box a little bit better, so we can have better availability to design and create. But I think a district like this will give us the leeway. You know, now the city's going to have some rules, of course, that we have to stick to, and we're going to have talk about setbacks and lighting, and we're going to have to talk about standards and roads and sidewalks and all that stuff. But let the creatives create, and we have an opportunity with Middle Eight, with the factory, they are bringing in great designers. They're bringing in people that do this for a living. They're the creatives, and they can bring a special place here and create this district. The placement, the artistry, the hospitality, those are the things that those people bring. I think of in Hawaii, the Punch Bowl area, they have a couple other places. I'm thinking of different districts around the nation that they have these districts. And they're really special places. They're a place setting. They pull you in. You want to be there. And somebody said, I don't remember who it was, but someone said something about, well, this could be that last rural area over here with that open space and everything. I'm like, no, this is not a rural area. But we need to cast a vision. You guys are doing that. What's the vision we want to achieve? I think the district, our art district, the creativity, the expression, the design, we better get this right because we got an opportunity. Now, I'll say that Northside McEwen, that's not a district, but I will say the Northside McEwen people, the side where Whole Foods is, with some tweaking, it could have been better.
Right.
We could have done a lot better over there, but it's okay. And then you look at Dwell, and you look at Grant Park down the road, and that whole area sort of flows. And people walk outside Grant Park, out of their condos. They walk outside Dwell. They go up to Whole Foods. They do this. So I think this district can create that and put that whole synergy with the connection to downtown and a connection further away as well. And then we have this great park across the street that people come to all the time, and then they have all these things they can go to here and access. And I think some of the vision that I've heard from this other development that they want to do gives a lot of opportunities for people to live here and pull in some of the opportunities we haven't been given. So anyway, I love it. I love everything about it. I look forward to a discussion of what we can do and how we need to do our job. I would say that Alderman and the mayor, we need to do our job, staff needs to do our job, but I'd also encourage us to get out of the way. And if the district is formed, we get out of the way and let the creatives and the designers do the creativity and the design that brings us something fabulous, so we don't stifle them. Okay, that's all.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew, you asked a question as you were talking about where we're headed on this. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see some details from other cities and the art districts that they've created. You know, I think immediately of the theater district in New York or in Chicago. So, you know, having some of those, and even here in the Nashville, or there in the Nashville metro area, speaking with some of those larger organizations with Nashville Ballet and TPAC, et cetera, and getting some of their insights. I'd really like to see that. And I'll go ahead and say, last night I was with a local, Franklin artist. We're driving in the car, and we literally pulled up to the stoplight right there, and we hit it red. And I said, "Let me tell you what's happening right here." And he got excited about it. He goes, "Really? I had no idea." I said, "It's coming." So there's a nice, gentle, positive rumbling of support that's going on right now.
Alderman Baggett.
I'll make it quick.
Then I'll get Alderman Hanson after that.
Because thank you for doing these workshops. A few things. One, Liberty Pike is the key, period. We've got to make sure Liberty Pike is correct in facilitating this placemaking. And I will step back and say that, you know, we get staff gets a lot of darts thrown at them for ordinances and getting creative. But you guys I love how this engagement is going. And I think this is a great example of fantastic, I just sense excitement. And I think there is. And so that's awesome. So thank you, staff. Although we, doing our job, but this is great. Design elements, streetscape has to be key on Liberty Pike to make this work at all. It's the spinal cord. Transit is, I would say, probably a close second, and here's why. Because I'm just telling you, Alan and the factory folks, that place is going to be bang up. That place is going to be. There's going to be so many people there. I know that scares a lot of people, but everyone's going to love it. Because there's fantastic restaurants, and I'm doing a little commercial for you. But the reality is there's going to be a lot of people coming. They used to bring tour buses from Opryland to the factory. I'm not sure they're going to do that, but they might. And so we've got to figure out how to get people from the factory to our downtown without them getting in their car. If this actually takes shape, and I think if it does, this is going to be a fantastic I mean, people are going to want to come here. Downtown in the factory district, Franklin weekend. We've got to figure out how to get people regularly from the factory to downtown and from downtown to the factory without getting in their car. And walking is a possibility, but it's kind of some people can make the walk, but others can't. And we really need to make sure we facilitate that. It's going to be imperative that we figure that out. Historic zoning special considerations. My friends on the Historic Zoning Commission know I love them, but this district is going to be different than downtown. And we all voted for blade signs. And, you know, and they don't like blade signs because it's not in our ordinance. Like, I don't know. I mean, I just think those are the kinds of things where, that's a little example and kind of in jest, but like we need to think about, those are the kinds of things I think we need to think about in this district that creativity needs to be extended, is those kinds of elements. And so maybe a historic zoning special consideration or something. Thank you.
Alderman Hanson.
So the first time I heard it, I was really excited, and I was really grateful to Patrick and Matt for bringing this in front of us. And so, of course, my head just took off, and Eric can attest, I just kind of went off on a tangent one afternoon about this because I can see it as this wonderful transition. As you cross the tracks on Liberty, traffic does kind of naturally slow down there, and you transition in, and then you're coming from downtown and you're transitioning to something else as well. And then my head goes into the Arts Commission, Brandy, and all these ugly utility boxes that have somehow managed to go along the sidewalks, and how the Art Commission could do these fantastic murals that don't totally enclose these boxes, but decorate around them and keep them from public view, but capture the attention of people who are walking back and forth between that transition. And I see this as a really playful area, an engaging area, and ultimately something that's very endearing that brings every age back over and over again. And I'm so excited to see what this turns into. But in our conversation, I think it's really important that we expand that boundary a little bit and push in Miles Manor and the other homes, because they will be significantly affected, I think, in good ways from this. But I'd love to see that boundary line expanded into those homes so that they're part of and not excluded from this factory district. That's it.
Good, thanks.
Aunt Brandy. So, and not to be Debbie Downer, but I think my concern, Patrick brought up the Historic Design Review Committee. I think, and Kelly Dannenfels and I just had a brief talk about this one day, and me and my snide way of going, I just don't like it. I really think it's interesting that in all instances, BOMA trumps all, except for that one. And to get so far down the finish line, and then we don't have final say, and we're the elected officials, it's probably not the great place to have this discussion. But it could really create issues in this one instance. I know you're gonna give me some, this is why, and it's.
State law, it's not something we did, it's state.
I know, but I think it's so frustrating because, like, the hard stuff that we just got through talking about, we gotta be the bad guys. Because we're the elected officials that the citizens say, you are my voice. But if you got something historic, I can't help you. That's just, I know, Shauna. I want the public to know it is a cross we have to bear that I think, again, not to be Debbie Downer, it could really rear its ugly head in this situation. And I don't know how we fix that. So,
Yeah.
So let's be creative about how we could.
Well, part of it is
dissuade that.
engaging now with them as
Agreed.
opposed to on the back end. So there may be some dialogue to have as this starts to take shape to engage historic zoning and talking about what that could look like now as opposed to, at the very end of the process.
But they
But they do
following-
have a responsibility under state law, so that's what you gotta.
Understood.
Yeah,
but are they always following what's written? Or
No.
how much wiggle room is in their urging or their opinion? That's, I
Right.
think, I want to know. Look, I'm like a snake charmer. But, I mean, how much room is there for creativity?
Yeah.
A lot.
So,
Alderman Brown.
Good point.
First of all, just thanks everybody for your enthusiasm, and I love that. It gives me a lot of hope and promise for where we're headed. So thank you for that, and I hope that enthusiasm actually will carry over. I've talked to a couple of the historic zoning folks, and I think they're just as excited about what could be here, and I hope we'll find a great place for it. So I just want to say two things that I'd heard since we're kind of wrapping comments is, first of all, this district is not to be exclusive of other arts happening in our community. Creating an art district is about creating a place and creating enthusiasm and creating. I would hope that if we do this really well, we elevate the arts in our entire community. And so those that are coming to Studio 10 or coming to the Factory for Arts are also going over to TPAC or also going to the other theaters in our town. I'm sorry, I just totally blanked.
Franklin Theater.
The one right next door is Pull Tight and all that. So I would hope that would all happen. It's about creating that destination here that all ships rise. And so I just want to make sure that I say that back to those that had a concern that we were being exclusive. And the other thing is we're also not trying to create amphitheaters and all of that here. This is really about an arts district. It's really about a unique place to feel connected as a visitor, as a resident, to something that really interests you, that connects to your values and connects to your interest. And we're not trying to create an outdoor concert venue in this thing. So I just want to make sure I said those two things out of the gate here.
I think I'd like to make a comment if I could. I applaud you bringing this, and I think it's a great idea. I've always listened about placemaking. But if you look at Franklin, we've got a little nugget downtown. It's not really very big. So as we look to the future of Franklin, what are our other opportunities? And I think, as you mentioned, the Franklin or the Factory District is a great one. But I'd like you to look some other places also. Let's look at Hillsborough Road. We spent a lot of money on that. We've got a bunch of non-conforming use buildings that I tell people every day, I wish I had a bulldozer and I had the guts to go run through them. But I don't, and I'm not going to break the law, and I'm not going to get arrested.
Call Margaret.
And then also you've got Columbia Avenue where we've spent a lot of money. And I think those are areas of opportunity also. But we've always created placemaking here in Franklin. We've created it with historic districts that protect areas, and these are just huge opportunities. Natchez, we've got to protect that area and develop those areas so that they stay that special place. So thanks for bringing it. Huge opportunity. I like the energy of this board. I love every one of you. I love your thoughts. All of them are different sometimes. And the fact that you haven't asked me to break a tie vote, I appreciate that recently. So, anybody else before we move on?
I did tell staff, Mayor, that Fifth Avenue North is second on my list, so it's coming. It's coming.
Well, we'll have to change the flood zone ordinance.
Yeah.
And all the people said.
It's a good thing you said that while Miss Ann wasn't here.
Well, I have one quick comment. I've been looking at McEwen because McEwen actually could be a district in itself, starting at the two glass office buildings, which has been bought now to Franklin Park, is going to be different. And then we've got Ovation coming online eventually. And then we have that whole district down to the roundabout, all the way down McEwen. And that could be an entire district. And I talked about a pedestrian bridge, and remember we brought this up. And it is expensive, but we might have to have a buy-in with the city and all the development happening there. I can see this gorgeous pedestrian bridge going across McEwen, and with the McEwen sign up saying, this is not it, but McEwen, the village of McEwen or something, but it's part of Cool Springs. But it has the logo of the city on there and everything, and it could be fabulous. So I think this is a catalyst to kind of make some of these other things happen as well. Theater,
We need to
of
move
course.
on, too.
Theater, of course, is only one little aspect of art, and but there's a lot of opinions will abound, and I think we'll have some issues with that.
Well, we need to go to item number 5,
zoning.
which is a downtown traffic and parking study. I'm going to alert you now that I plan on not bringing forward item number 9 tonight. I think that's still
Number 9.
flux.
Taking shape, I guess.
Are still taking shape.
Yeah.
All right, so our staff team has worked on some specifics around downtown traffic and parking, and we wanted to walk you through some of our findings and have especially our traffic engineering team take you through it.
So you all know Adam Mosier, our city traffic engineer, but also with us is David Chang, who's our traffic engineer too. He does a lot of the works behind the scenes with signal timing and reviewing traffic impact studies and looking at the data and dealing with complaints. So they did the bulk of this work. I'm going to turn it over to them. And also, in addition, we have our former traffic engineer, my friend and former colleague Carl Boffman here, here to engage as well. So I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, and actually, I'm just going to turn it right over to David because he's going to start the presentation. But again, David's been a wonderful addition, and he's my main modeler. He loves digging into that software more than I do, so I'm getting too old for that, I guess. So go ahead, David, you start us off.
So tonight we're just going to talk about the downtown study that we did, and we'll talk about the purpose and define the study area that we used for this study, and then this study is kind of broken up into two parts. One was the destination versus cut through that's happening downtown, as well as the bypass routes that people are using, and then Adam will talk about the parking study, followed by recommendations and next steps. So a while back it's been asked, what are all these cars doing downtown? Are they cutting through, or are they coming down to shop, eat, do business downtown? So that's what we're trying to find out through this study. And the study area in the image to the right is defined by the highlighted in that yellow, the transparent yellow. And one thing to note on this image is the gate locations. So these gates are where we indicate to the software that we use that any car coming through this location, keep track of it and let us know where it goes, and tally up all those cars that come through downtown area and tell us where they ended up, or if they ended up downtown. And to do this, we looked at using big data solutions, and we used two for this study. One was Streetlight and one was SMATS. They essentially do the same thing, but they go about it using different data. So the reason we used two was to find out the benefits and disadvantages of each. Because they're not the same, they do things differently. We wanted to find out if there was an opportunity in the future, if we have a project, which one might fit this, which might be the better solution for these projects. One of the advantages to Streetlight's been around longer. It's a more mature program. It has a larger sample size. And it uses mobile data for where they get their data from. SMATS, it's newer. It has a smaller sample size, but the big advantage to using SMATS data is that it uses actual vehicles. So vehicles that have hardware and software integrated into their individual cars. So we know we're getting actual vehicles, but then again, not every car has this, and not every company shares their data. So with that, with the SMATS data, we actually know when the cars are on and when they're off. So when they come downtown, they turn off their car, we know they're downtown in this area. However, with the Streetlight data, we have to kind of set a time limit. So if they dwell in downtown area for what we used is 20 minutes, because we have a lot of traffic downtown at peak times, 10 minutes is easily overcome. So we set a time limit. If you're longer than 20 minutes, we're assuming that you came downtown to eat, do business. And if you're less than it, then you're a cut-through vehicle. We looked at 3 different time periods: AM, noon, and PM. And from this study, we found that about 2/3 to 3/4 of all trips coming through the downtown area are passing through. They're cut-through traffic. So that leaves, and that's true for AM, noon, and PM, weekday or weekend. So 1 out of 3 to 4 vehicles are actually coming downtown to eat, shop, and do business. And it should come to no surprise that 96 East Murfreesboro Road is by far the busiest road coming to downtown. That's true for just about any time of the day, every day of the week. 96 West and Franklin Road were also pretty busy, but mostly during the AM and PM peak times, mainly due to school. So one of the things we wanted to make sure when we looked at these two different softwares that we used was, do their results agree with each other? And for the most part, they do. They did. They both showed the top 5 or 6 routes, busiest routes, cut-through routes. The order might have been slightly different. I mean, we're dealing with different sample sizes, different ways to get the data. So there's going to be a little bit of variation, but for the most part, the results agreed. So that was a very positive thing moving forward for us. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Adam.
Yeah, so the biggest question we had once we saw the results was, what is the primary cause of the cut-through traffic? What are those vehicles doing? Where are they going? So looking at that and looking at the time frames in which they were coming through, the largest, I don't know, I guess core area or core cut-through traffic is school riders, school car riders. As you see right there in the graphic, Freedom has a very wide zone. So both intermediate and middle. So that's the whole purple area there. So to get to it, you have to, for the most part, cut through downtown. Some of the other, like high schools, there's Centennial, there's Franklin. There's also, is it Johnson Elementary, has some zones that may also pass through downtown. So there's all that traffic. The reason why we know that is because our peak hour changed from 4:30 to 5:30 to 3 to 4. So once Mac Hatcher was done, the peak hour shifted from 3 to 4, which is pretty much school traffic. So Franklin Special did a bus study on November 16th of this past year. And they wanted to look, that they were really great to work with. We looked at Freedom Intermediate and Elementary. We want to know, actually, was our theory correct? About just over 50% are bus riders, and the rest are car riders, most likely. Obviously, there's sports and activities after school. They actually plan for 840 vehicles on their surge, which is not the total capacity of the students, but that is what they plan for. And any given day, they probably have about 65 to 70% bus riders of both schools combined.
Of the total population.
Of the total out of the 840. So you add up, the buses stop at, I think it's intermediate or middle, and then they go to intermediate, and they combine onto the buses. So
Surge capacity, that's one thing I didn't understand. Surge capacity, that's like as many students as they could possibly put on a bus.
In twos. Technically, legally, they said that they could put 3 in a seat, but for middle schoolers, it's very hard to sit 3 in a seat. So they
Yeah.
do that by twos.
Twos is good. So okay, so that's the 69% of the surge capacity.
Yeah, total. Yep. So that's what they can carry in twos per seat.
And again, just for clarification, bus surge capacity is both Freedom Intermediate and
Correct.
and Freedom Middle.
Yep.
Just double checking.
Yep. In a bad worst case scenario, they can legally put 3 in a seat, so they could actually go up. They try not to. So moving on, and the other traffic was, we kind of moved ahead, but the commuter North Columbia area, Williamson County, et cetera, they choose to, instead of taking Columbia down to Mac Hatcher, what we found is they're actually kind of the north part of all those businesses and whatnot will go through downtown to get to 96 Franklin Road, mostly because of Columbia congestion. It's too congested on Mac Hatcher and Columbia. So. But generally, we do know the bypass routes to downtown. You all know them too. We hear the complaints: South Margin, Church Bridge, all those mostly east-west routes. Those are our bypass routes. And we did do a study. I know you all asked for it after we opened Northwest Extension for Mac Hatcher. The next slide shows that very well. Luckily, we have some 24-hour counters out there with our detection, so we can see pretty much how much traffic is coming day to day. This represents an average day. As you can see, the Northwest Extension, 16,000 cars on the 2-lane section. It increased another 10,000 cars on the 4-lane section divided. So, and then, as you would expect, 96 West reduced, Bridge Street reduced, and we had just very little reduction on South Margin. So that's how that helped that. Mostly bridge. The other thing I did want to bring up is Old Hillsboro was a major bypass route for the West Haven community to get to Nashville. And so we've heard that traffic has actually shifted to Mac Hatcher. So we don't have counts on Old Hillsboro Road. Unfortunately, TDOT didn't do a 2022 count. So we don't know how much has been diverted off of Old Hillsboro and using Mac Hatcher. So moving on to the parking study. This is kind of an update of the 2016 data that they did. The same consultant did the update this past year in 2022. This just summarizes our capacity for general public parking in the highlighted area. Obviously, there's more parking outside of that highlighted area. What we thought is that starts to get a little too far away from the central business district, more residential. So while there may be additional spaces on street and whatnot, this is the core that we looked at downtown. So about 2/3 of it's free and 1/3 of it's pay as far as spaces go. Occupancy, you can see that. The interesting thing is we do know everyone knows kind of our garages are the main attraction. They get fairly full on a Thursday or Friday midday. On streets, the second most occupied space. Our public lots, I want to caution you that number's skewed just a tad. We don't have many public lots. The new lot up north of North Margin remains mostly unoccupied during the day, so that's skewing that number down to 57%. And then your private pay lots, as you can see, at any given day, 50% on the surface lots, and the Harpeth Hotel is very low on occupancy as far as that goes. So, and the garage data is not in the Walker study report. That's coming from either our new system or the Harpeth Hotel gate system, monitoring those occupancies. So duration, we wanted to look at how long they were staying. So we did a study one day to see how long the vehicles were staying in the spaces. We have a 90% compliance for the 2-hour limit. That's great. There is better turnover. So, and actually a good chunk of that, 70%, are actually staying 1 hour or less. So they're pulling in there, getting their business done, going to wherever they are, getting out, 70% of those vehicles. That was I think on the Thursday, just a typical day, nice weather. School was in session, so that was good. The Second Avenue garage, not on this graphic. We wanted to look and see, okay, what's a typical time frame where you'd say it's possibly an employee downtown. So we used a 4-hour, and then we pulled the data from the new garage system. In the Second Avenue garage, about 40% of the vehicles in there are staying longer than 4 hours. In the Fourth Avenue garage, 25% are staying 4 hours or more. So the rest of those are under 4 hours.
So our parking space system also allows us to see how long people park there.
Yep.
Just, it's an interesting.
Is there any
wrinkle.
note on overnight parking in the Second Avenue? Was that number looked at?
I brought it up because we don't have that. I guess we could pull the data.
I'd be interested to know
I
that.
think the IT committee is going to meet and talk about how they can monitor that. You can do a flashing red or something if they're longer than 24 hours.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
And Eric, you kind of spurred the thought here, is if we can track that time, and as you just said, if we have that flashing red, do we have any information on what the police department is doing as far as citations inside those parking lots?
I know that they're not, I don't think they're ticketing for anything over 24 hours last time I talked to them.
24 hours is the
Hard to
ordinance. We haven't used the system to identify those.
Okay.
It does allow overnight parking, but not longer than 24 hours. We obviously look at other parking issues on time limits, other places in downtown, and then if there's just other parking violations, they enforce those.
So just moving on, just recommendations, our short-term recommendations, we are going to revisit the downtown signal timing. It's not going to be earth-shattering. The reason for that is because pedestrians do not wait. They have a time limit, and so we can't put a long green and pedestrians will be running across the street. So we're very limited in downtown timing with heavy pedestrians. So again, you won't see anything earth-shattering, you might see some little few improvements, but we don't expect anything too big. I think the amount of time that a typical pedestrian will wait, we've done the research, we've looked it all up, about 35 to 40 seconds is their preferred time, and they will start complaining when it hits 60 seconds. So as you can imagine, that kind of limits your green times. They'll start diving across the road. The second thing, dynamic message signing. Now that we have a garage system that we can relay, fullness of the garages, that is an option. The signs aren't cheap. There's two different types. You'll see those in the pictures. There's a static that just kind of shows you how many spaces and then where it's at. The other type is a more dynamic. You can change the messages on it. We could say, hey, part Second Avenue this way and how many spaces are left. It's bigger. Not exactly pleasant to look at. Just the next slide kind of shows you what that footprint might look like on a mast arm. Probably not something we necessarily want to look at. It would probably take it away. Very, very effective. You could tell people where to park and where to go for detours and all that stuff. But again, it's a little unsightly on the signal mast arms. Longer term discussion that we would like to have down the road is there a balance of private and pay? You can see from our data that everyone gravitates towards the free, the convenient location, 1 to 2 blocks to Main Street. What does that look like? One-way streets, while it seems good in theory, you increase speeds, safety goes down, and it totally changes the dynamic of a downtown. In fact, Nashville took some of their one-way streets out a while back. Geometric improvements, we obviously have no right-of-way. You'd have to get this with all the historic zones. We could reduce parking on street and widen some turn lanes or lengthen some turn lanes and do things like that. I know it's unpopular. And then how do we further reduce cut-through traffic? New routes, bridges, lots of money. School bus ridership, how do we promote that? Trying to get some of those cars off the road. And last but not least, a new middle school on the east side so that they don't have to go through downtown to get to school. It's always something to think about. And that's it.
Okay, I do have a couple of speakers. Y'all ready for the speakers?
As the speakers are coming up, this is all work our staff team did. This is consultant level work, and they did it. So great job. Thank you.
This is my other life, so it's
How can I disconnect my snacks?
Truthfully, that is between the phone companies and the apps that you download. And when you say, yes, I don't care, agree, it's in there somewhere. So,
But they don't know who you are.
no,
I've got
It's anonymous.
Bob Ravner and Walter Green.
It's anonymous.
Staff had an opportunity to look at their,
Yes, sir.
okay, great.
End of last week.
Come on up, Bob and Walter. And not to insult you, but how long are each one of you going to speak or need to address this?
Keep it under 2 minutes for sure.
Unbelievable.
Thank you all. I'm Bob Ravner, I live at 221 3rd Avenue South. I'm the president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. We have got a very active and committed board, and we represent about 400 households downtown. And I think the study that you all have done, things that we've known anecdotally and things that we talk about among our top issues are traffic, congestion, flow, and pedestrian safety. Appreciate everything the aldermen are doing. Appreciate Alderman Baggett taking this on. we recognize that this is a lot to do across a wide swath of territory, but we believe there are certain things we can do that are very specific, and we can start somewhere and willing to work with the city and want to work with the city to try to help us do that. Let's keep this in mind. While the study proves that most of this traffic is passed through, we still have almost 2 million visitors to Franklin a year. All this exciting stuff that's going on, Franklin being the #1 city in Tennessee, it's going to bring more people here. And so it's only going to make the challenges downtown that much more significant. We sent out a survey. 97% of the people in the survey said traffic is an issue among our residents. 3/4 of those people said pedestrian safety is an issue. A week doesn't go by that one of us doesn't see some accident happen along our roads, cars getting flipped at the intersection of 4th and Margin, cars getting taken out, and luckily no pedestrians have been affected up until now, but it's a real concern, and we want to work with you to do that. We've done some work on our own. We're very interested in working directly with the city, and we think that there is a corridor between Lewisburg and 3rd, along that South Margin corridor where we can start and try to get some better traffic flow through that. Thank you.
Thank you for having DNA here, Bob and myself, and echo what Bob says. I couldn't do what you do. Your passion is unbelievable. Your attention, your intelligence, I really respect what you folks do. So my piece of this was the traffic part. Before Patrick came to DNA and said, let's try to get something going, I found myself out there at the intersection of South Margin, eastbound South Margin, at 3rd, counting cars, because I live a block away. This is not self-serving. That's not what this is. This is all about community. That's what DNA does, and traffic is in our wheelhouse, and we're obligated to address this. So I counted cars, morning and afternoon, school in, school out. I got some funny looks, because it's kind of weird to stand there, but it's okay. I got a job to do. So I counted up to about 700 cars, watching whether they're going left, straight, right. And by that time, I saw a pattern. And that pattern was, give or take a couple of percent, 93% are turning right, 5% straight, 2% left. And I saw that traffic was backing up badly to 4th Avenue and often to Lewisburg, because cars would sit there waiting to go left or straight when they could be turning right on red. That's just what happens there. And so I know it's kind of tough to change signals sometimes, but what jumps out is maybe we should consider right turn on red and right turn only there. Something to consider, because there are more accidents occurring at 4th Avenue 1 to 6. When you look at the data, and the year before COVID, the year after COVID, those accidents are rising. It's partly because of the backups and the sight distance issues. So I was counting cars. Patrick came to us, and we decided, yeah, we'll work with you mutually to do something to try to help traffic, even some little thing. And so we decided that we were going to perform a small investigation, micro compared to what you guys do, citywide, and that included looking at Franklin Police Department crash data, which is in the report, and that crash data indicated that the most dangerous route, or a couple of blocks, anywhere in downtown Franklin was the corridor that Bob mentioned between Lewisburg and 3rd Avenue on South Margin. It's dangerous. Bob mentioned the survey. The survey gave similar results, even though survey results are kind of squishy because there's margin of error and all that. That same corridor was right at the top of people's concerns for safety. And then I thought Patrick had a really good idea. He suggested we bring in a traffic engineer. John Hall came and gave his time and effort. We visited the site twice, worked up a report that essentially says this intersection is crying out for having right turn only looked at. It can help in a number of different ways. So DNA prepared the reports, gave them a lot of QA, and the board, there was a lot of discussion with the board for a number of reasons, but the board approved the reports, and they approved the recommendation for looking at considering right turn only. So that's where we are. And thank you for hearing us. I think I went more than 2 minutes, but I'm sorry.
Thank you, Walter. Y'all ready to move on, or do you want to make some comments?
May I?
Sure, absolutely.
And thank you, staff. Like, we met back in April or something, and we had had a Zoom call on this. And one of these things that you said we would do is this, and thank you for doing it and following through. So that's what people want to know in downtown. And actually, if you don't live in downtown, you want to know this too. How can I get through this area, effectively? And I did encourage the DNA because a lot of times people come in here and we hear anecdotes, right? I mean, and, anecdotes, you can get an anecdote to justify just about anything, right? In traffic and other things. So I did encourage them to look at, just find some data, like where is actually stuff happening? And so the police department, thank you, Chief, she's left, but for giving them that data. I think we have to look at things that are I think there's going to have to be some trial and error on some of this stuff, especially like right turn only, left turn only too, coming the other way. I mean, I think we have to get creative and really look at some of these specific situations because we can't widen roads. And doing nothing is not really, in my opinion, an option. So, and I know that y'all are exhausting everything that is, in the playbook, but we need to look at some other things too. And it may be one-way streets. I don't know that there's broad support for that. And your recommendations, don't support that. But we've got to look at some other things, like you said, geometric improvements to get this flowing. Because as Bob said, that it's not getting better, or it's not going to get better by itself. And I think we know that. Mac Hatcher helped, obviously, but I think we definitely need to do some more. Real quick, I would love, and I'm going to initiating this, but we need to figure out bus ridership. The number I don't know is the total number of students. I think that's the number. So we know the bus capacity, but how many? So there's 500 riders, but are there 1,500 students? Those two. How many people are driving?
Yeah, it was the first column number. It was like 500 and something and 500 and something. That's the enrolled students.
Enrolled students.
Yeah,
Okay, so
Freedom Intermediate, Freedom Middle.
I see. Okay, so that's 500. That's probably then what? How many cars? 3 to 500 for something that are coming through at peak time. I don't know if there's a bus ridership program. If you've seen this, and this may be a transit authority question, but do municipalities work with school districts to help incentivize bus ridership? I mean, I don't know. We get those cars off the road, and well, we have to have the bus drivers. But the point is that I think that is a huge low-hanging fruit. Doesn't cost money to build a road.
Franklin Transit has a program with the high schools, by the way.
The high schools, yeah. But I think really the high schools, the zoning looked like it was fine as far as through traffic. It's this, that was the problem. The other thing is, your study, MLK was on-street parking was included in all of it, and it's always empty. I mean, it's green all the time. So if you pulled MLK out, anyway, it wouldn't look as great. And I'd venture to say we could then start saying we may have a parking problem. I've heard staff say before, we don't have a parking problem in downtown. I don't know. These results show that maybe we have something to work on. Second Avenue, no overnight. More rigorous. Was it Walker? One of their notes. More rigorous compliance might lead. It's only the executive summary. More rigorous compliance might lead to better circulation. I don't know what the exact term was, but may help. And I think they noticed in their study that we weren't doing probably, that we weren't, working with we were not overly rigorous in our compliance. I'll put it that way. So that's low hanging fruit. I'll stop because we need to go on, but I hope we can have maybe some. Here's what I'd like to do is maybe set up a meeting with DNA leadership and engineering staff and city staff and talk about some of the ideas they put forward. I hope all the aldermen read the report. It's very interesting, and the survey is as well. This is a city problem. This is not just a downtown problem. This is a citywide problem because 75% of these people don't live downtown, and they're not coming here to shop. They're just passing through. So this affects every ward. This affects aldermen at large. This affects everybody, not just the downtown residents. So hopefully we can schedule that meeting maybe and then talk through some of the pros and cons and move forward with some of these options.
Vice Mayor?
Well, do we have any data on the Franklin Transit Authority and how many they carry?
Yeah, they have ridership numbers.
Yeah.
Franklin Transit Authority does. Okay. Should they not be on here?
We didn't include it on there.
And I can understand why, because Franklin is is in the county, part of it is. Probably Centennial's probably in part of the county. So I can understand why you might not have it on there, but I don't see, here's what I'm saying, and I may not be out in time. I'm out in the afternoon in time, but I don't see a lot of riders on the Franklin Transit Authority, which makes me wonder how many students are using it, even though it's available. So, but anyway, that's enough said about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about those numbers either. Okay, we'll go to item 6, which is consideration resolution 2022-85, a resolution rejecting the November 2nd, 2022 construction bids for the State Route 96 traffic signal improvement project. TDOT asked that be redone. So we'll keep moving on. Discussion concerning a proposed culvert replacement project on Del Rio Pike.
This is really informational. We want to share a condition we're working on and where we may need to go with this stretch of road on Del Rio. So this is a Paul and Adam special as well. So.
Yeah, so this problem was identified during the construction along Del Rio Pike by one of our inspectors. Noticed the safety issue that we have out there. Ultimately, there's a limited amount of right-of-way as well. What you have out there is 2 9.5-foot lanes, which is extremely narrow. Then you have about a 1-to-1 drop-off, and it drops off 12 to 14 feet. So that is a major safety issue. As we looked at it, and we decided at a staff level, our recommendation needed to be to, as quickly as and feasibly as we can, to go in there and try to do a bridge replacement project or a culvert lining project. We need to look at pros and cons of both and expense and how long the road would need to be closed to accommodate that type of project, but to improve the safety. Ultimately, what staff is recommending is to move forward with our on-call engineering firm to start and initiate the design phase just to get by this culvert. We did explore other options like putting in guardrail or putting in a barrier. Ultimately, what we determined was any guardrail or barrier that gets put in is going to further reduce that lane width, creating a bigger problem. We did look at accident history. We don't have an accident history here, but we certainly don't want one in a rainy event or at nighttime. If one tire catches that wrong, they're going off into that culvert, and that is an extreme drop. So from a staff level, we are recommending that we move forward with improving it. Now, I did attach an exhibit here that shows what the developer is doing. They're currently performing a widening project. What we're proposing is to cut it short because of lack of right-of-way, and then the city can come in and upgrade the bridge. Now, that bridge was never part of their scope. We do not add on to development projects. We don't go back on what we have told them. So we feel that this is a city issue to address. And given the safety issue, we're looking for your feedback to immediately start pursuing a project that we estimate right now to cost about $1.5 million all in. Now, that number is obviously going to change as we get into the survey and the design and everything else. But we would expedite this as quickly as we possibly can.
And from a funding standpoint, let me just add to that real quick. From a funding standpoint, I think we would look to accommodate it over a couple budgets. Given the nature of this, I'm not sure I would kick this into a CIP because it's got a specific safety concern to it. And so I'd like to have us get some of those numbers and look over the next couple budgets to be able to see what we could accommodate there as at least an option for you. So I'll stop there. So thank you.
Go ahead, Alderman Hanson.
So I guess my question is, this is the roadway on Del Rio that's still presently closed, that's kind of running behind, which we all knew it would be behind. So this is going to further close this road for a much more extended period of time, correct?
Well, what we've given the developer is an option to deliver it within an 8-month time frame, which is what we would have budgeted, or we would have anticipated 8-month closure for this. And we did whenever we issued the permit to close it. So we've modified the design to accommodate this 8-month closure, allow them to get it done, get it open. Now, I'm hopeful that within 2 years, we can be back out there fixing it. And that's why we're going to look at two options. One's a culvert replacement. If we do that, it's probably another full closure. Otherwise, we might try to line the culvert. We just got to look at pros and cons and costs associated with both of those options.
So it would reopen, and then we would come back and do this repair. It's down the line.
So when is it projected to reopen at this point?
I'm hopeful spring, summer at the latest.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once the road reopens, now that you've recognized this and you've seen what the risk is, do we have any plans to add any additional markers along that side to prevent somebody from, as you said, just taking that, their tire catching? So are you going to add any more yellow markers, or is there any plan for that?
Yes, we're going to work with our street department to put enhanced thermoplastic down and fix some of the markers that are out there,
Okay.
including some warning signs. But, we're going to work as diligently, as fast as we can to get that fixed.
Perfect. So we've got our due diligence covered then.
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
If it takes 2 years, is there the guardrails temporarily? Is there such thing as a temporary guardrail, or is that
Not without reducing the lane width further, which we think will create a bigger hazard.
Okay.
9.5 foot is a very, very narrow lane.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Obviously, I'm a big fan of getting this open back up again. Any safety concerns of reopening until we address it, though, I guess is my only concern.
We looked at the crash history. We did not see a huge crash history here. So given that crash history, we're proposing to sign it very well, put barrels up, and open it back up just to provide that relief to the general public, knowing that we're working towards that solution.
But this has been this way for, I used to skip school and drive down this
Yes.
road and cut the back way to go to Temple Hills. So these are old country roads.
Yep.
I understand the need to fix it, but it's not like, oh my gosh, where'd this come from? It's been that way forever.
Well, some of the brush, when it got cut down and having an inspector out there overseeing the Del Rio project, it really got brought to our attention.
Understood.
And that's what's driving it. It's one thing to not know about a problem and not do anything, but if you know about the issue, is where we're concerned, we have an obligation to try to fix it and make it safe.
Item 8, ordinance 2022-44, an ordinance revising the installation fees for Title 18, Chapters Appendix A, comprehensive fees and penalties, Chapter 18 of the Franklin Municipal Code, establishing a public hearing on February 28th. We are voting on this tonight.
You have it on for a first reading. It's a 3-reading item. We didn't have anything really to present except for, we gave it to you. We've talked about it a couple previous work sessions and just here to answer questions. So if you have anything else, and like the mayor said, it is on for first reading tonight.
I had a couple questions, but well, not sure they can all be answered.
We also
This is-
did give you an
this is
option
so-
on a 2-year phase-in, so that's something for you to weigh in on as well versus a straight one shot. This is not the impact fees. This is the installation costs. And so we propose that as an
Yeah.
option, as a 2-year phase-in for that.
So this is just
But
the install.
ratepayers are paying, we're losing money right now because we're not charging enough money to install.
That's correct.
And so 2 years of phasing it in means that we're still we're still losing money.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so right now ratepayers are supplementing those new connections that are being made.
All ratepayers?
Yes.
Utilities.
Okay.
Yep,
I'm
water and
not-
then sewer separate.
Let's try to come back in 10 minutes.
Oh,